March 1964, New Orleans, Louisiana. A small boat repair shop on the west bank of the Mississippi, 2 blocks south of the Algiers ferry landing. The smell of fiberglass resin and bilge water and pine tar hangs over the dock in the warm morning air. A man from Southern Mutual Insurance arrives at 9 o'clock with a denial letter, a company attorney, and a manner that belongs to a man who has never once in his career been told no. Thibodaux is 51 years old. He has run this shop for 22 years on the same wooden dock his father built in 1931. In 11 minutes, he is going to lose it. Here is the story. Emile Thibodaux came down from Bro Bridge in 1928 with $40 and a set of caulking irons wrapped in a canvas roll. He had learned boat work on the Atchafalaya, fixing the flat-bottomed bateau the crawfish men used, and he was good at it in the way that men from that part of Louisiana are good at working with their hands, which is to say completely and without any interest in doing anything else. He found the lot on the Algiers waterfront and built the dock himself from salvage lumber in the spring of 1929. He opened for business the Monday after he drove the last nail. Emile fixed shrimp boats and oyster luggers, and the occasional pleasure craft that came off the river with a cracked hull or a fouled shaft. He charged fair prices. He kept his tools clean. He built a reputation on the West Bank the way a man builds a reputation in a place like Algiers, which is slowly and by doing the work right every single time. He married a woman named Clothilde in 1933. Their son Cy was born in 1913. Cy grew up on the dock the way children grow up when the work is always present, which is to say he learned it before he knew he was learning it. Emile died in 1952 of pneumonia after a wet February working an oyster lugger in the rain. He was 60 years old. Cy took over the next morning. He kept the caulking irons in the same canvas roll. He kept Emile's pricing on the board above the counter. He kept the dock in good repair, replacing planks as they went soft, driving new pilings when the river took the old ones. He kept the shop alive through the Korean years and the slow summers and the season in 1957, when a late hurricane came up the river and put 3 feet of water on the dock and took half the lumber in the yard with it. He rebuilt the yard in 2 weeks and was open again before October. Then, in the fall of 1963, a shrimp boat called the Marie Claire came in for a hull repair. The owner was a man from Lafitte named Broussard. The work was straightforward. A section of planking below the waterline that had been opened by a submerged piling in Barataria Bay. Cy pulled the boat, stripped the damaged section, sistered the frames, and laid in new planking. He launched her on a Friday. The following Tuesday, the Marie Claire went down in 6 feet of water at her slip in Lafitte. Broussard said the repair had failed. He said the new planking had let go at the seam. The truth was that Broussard had run the boat into another piling on the Saturday after the launch, 2 days after he took her back, and the impact had opened a seam 2 feet forward of Cy's repair. But Broussard had a brother-in-law who was a claims adjuster at Southern Mutual Insurance, and Southern Mutual held the policy on the Marie Claire, and the brother-in-law wrote the claim in a way that pointed at the repair rather than the impact. Southern Mutual sent an investigator who spent 45 minutes on the boat and wrote a report that agreed with the brother-in-law. Southern Mutual sent Cy a letter in December. The letter said his repair was the proximate cause of the loss. The letter said they were pursuing recovery of the claim value against him, $11,000. Cy did not have $11,000. He had the dock and the shop and the tools and a truck that needed a new transmission. He hired a lawyer on Magazine Street who told him the case was defensible, but the legal fees would run $4,000 before they ever got to a courtroom, and Southern Mutual's attorneys billed by the hour and were very good at running up the hours. By February of 1964, Cy had spent $1,900 he did not have on legal fees, and Southern Mutual had not moved an inch. In March, the company attorney arrived in person. The attorney's name was Greer. He drives a long black Oldsmobile and parks it on the levee road above the dock. He comes down the gangplank in a charcoal suit with the denial letter in a manila folder under his arm and the company's final offer in his breast pocket. The offer is $3,000, a settlement figure. Take it or leave it. Sign here and the suit goes away and Cy keeps his shop. What Greer does not say out loud, but what is perfectly clear in the language of the offer, is that if Cy does not sign, Southern Mutual will pursue the full $11,000 through the courts, and the legal costs alone will finish the shop before any judgment is handed down. Cy reads the offer at his counter with Greer standing on the other side of it. Clothold is in the back. She has heard every word through the wall. Cy sets the paper down. He looks at his hands on the counter. He looks at his father's caulking irons hanging on the wall in their canvas roll, the same place Emil put them in 1929. He does not sign. Greer recaps his pen. He tells Cy he has 72 hours to reconsider. He picks up his folder. He walks back up the gangplank toward the levee road. At the top of the gangplank, he passes a man coming down. The man is in his mid-30s, lean and sun-browned, wearing a navy surplus jacket over a white t-shirt and a pair of faded khakis. He has a duffel bag over one shoulder. He has been in New Orleans since Saturday. 3 days into a week, he had cleared in his calendar with no particular plan, the kind of week a man takes when the work has been continuous for too long and the body starts asking for open water and no schedule. He came across on the Algiers ferry that morning because somebody at the hotel on Canal Street had told him the West Bank was the real city, the one the tourists did not find, and he wanted to see it. He is looking for a marina that can take his rented sailboat for the afternoon while he walks the neighborhood. Somebody on the ferry told him to try Thibodaux. He steps around Greer on the gangplank without a word. He comes down onto the dock. He looks at the shop. He looks at the river. He looks at Cy behind the counter with the settlement offer on the wood in front of him, and the expression of a man who has just been handed a thing he cannot lift. He sets his duffel down on the dock. He steps into the shop. "You got a slip for a 22-foot sloop?" "Day rate." Cy looks up. "End of the dock," he says. $12. The man nods. He looks at the paper on the counter. He looks at Cy. He does not look away. "Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches." "Bad morning?" the man says. Cy looks at him for a moment. "Insurance company," he says. Says, "My repair sank a shrimp boat. Wants $11,000, or they take the dock." The man picks up the settlement offer from the counter. He reads it slowly, all of it, the way he would read a contract, which is to say he reads what the words say and also what the words are trying not to say. He sets it back down. "Your repair didn't sink that boat," he says. "It is not a question." "No," Cy says, "it did not." The man looks at the river. He looks at Emil's caulking irons on the wall. He looks at Cy. "Who is your lawyer?" "Magazine Street." "Man named Fontenot." The man reaches into the inside pocket of the navy jacket. He takes out a small leather notebook. He writes a name and a number on a blank page. He tears the page out and sets it on the counter. "Call this man today," he says. "Before 5 o'clock. Tell him what you told me. Tell him a friend sent you." Cy looks at the page. The name on it is a New Orleans attorney Cy has seen in the newspaper twice. The kind of attorney who takes cases that other attorneys consider lost and wins them in ways the other attorneys later study. "Mister," Cy says, "that man doesn't take cases like mine. He will take this one." Cy looks at him. "How do you know?" "Because I'm going to call him first." The man picks up his duffel. He walks to the end of the dock to look at the slip situation for his boat. He is there for 10 minutes. Then he goes back up the gangplank to the levee road. He is gone for 45 minutes. When he comes back down, he has a paper bag from a grocery on the levee road with 2 bottles of Barks root beer and a waxed paper package of boudin from the butcher 2 doors down. He sets them on the counter. "Called him from the pay phone on the levee," he says. "He's expecting you at 4. He takes one of the root beers. He leans against the counter and looks out at the river. Cy does not move for a long moment. Then he opens the second bottle. The two of them stand there in the March morning light and drink the root beer and watch a barge work its way upriver against the current. The man left after lunch. He shook Cy's hand at the gangplank. He did not leave a name. He walked back up to the levee road and was gone. Cy called the attorney at 4 o'clock. He drove across on the ferry with the torn notebook page in his shirt pocket and the settlement offer folded beside it. He sat in the attorney's office on Magazine Street for 40 minutes. The attorney listened for 22 minutes without interrupting. He asked 4 questions. He looked at the settlement offer. He looked at the notebook page. He took the case. He charged Cy nothing up front and told him not to worry about the back end either. He told Cy later that an old friend had called that morning and explained the situation and asked him as a personal favor to look at it, and that when he had looked at it, he had found it interesting on its own merits, which was the truth as far as it went. He did not say who had called. Cy did not ask. Some things you understand without the name attached. The case never went to court. The attorney filed a counterclaim in April that included a marine surveyor's report showing the impact damage 2 feet forward of Cy's repair, photographs of the piling that Broussard had struck, and sworn statements from 2 witnesses at the Lafitte Marina who had seen the Marie Claire come in damaged on the Saturday after the launch. Southern Mutual dropped the suit in June. They sent a letter of withdrawal with no admission of liability and no apology. Cy framed it. He ran Thibodaux Marine Repair on the Algiers waterfront for 19 more years after that March morning. He trained his own son on the same bench where Emile had trained him. He kept the caulking irons on the wall in their canvas roll until the day he retired in 1983. And when he retired, he gave them to his son the way Emile had given them to him, wrapped in the same canvas, without ceremony. Clotilde Thibodaux lived to 91. She outlived Cy by 7 years. In her last years, she told the story of the March morning to anyone who would sit still long enough to hear it. She told it to her grandchildren and to the women at St. Stephen's and to Henri's wife the first time she came to Sunday dinner, and to the young reporter from the Times-Picayune who came to interview her in 1997 about the old Algiers waterfront. She told it the way the women of that part of Louisiana tell stories, which is to say she told it completely and with every detail in its proper place. And she never left anything out, and she never hurried the parts that needed to breathe. She always ended it the same way. She would say, "He bought my husband a root beer and called a lawyer from a payphone on the levee and never told us his name." And that was enough. That was more than enough. The reporter asked her if she ever found out who it was. She said she had her suspicions. She said she had kept them to herself for 30 years, and she intended to keep them to herself for whatever was left. She smiled when she said it. In 1989, Cy's son Henri donated 2 items to the Louisiana State Museum on Chartres Street in the French Quarter. The first is the framed withdrawal letter from Southern Mutual Insurance, June 1964. The ink faded to brown at the edges. The second is a torn page from a small leather notebook, the name and phone number of a New Orleans attorney written in a plain, even hand. The page is mounted beside the letter behind a single piece of glass. The placard below the case reads, March 1964. A stranger came down the gangplank at Thibodaux Marine on the Algiers waterfront and read an insurance company's settlement offer on the counter. He made 1 phone call from a payphone on the Levee Road. He bought 2 root beers. He never came back. The dock is still there. On a clear day, you can see the French Quarter skyline across the river from the end of it. The same view Emile had when he drove the last nail into the planking in 1929 and stood back and looked at what he had built. He was the king of cool. He never cared about the rules, but he always knew how to do the right thing. If this story reached you, do me a favor, pass it on. Share it with a motor enthusiast in your life or a friend who never bows to the system. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. There are more McQueen stories coming, and unfortunately, they don't make rebel souls like Steve McQueen anymore.